Movies entertain. Entertainment leads to emotions. Those emotions connect us to our enjoyment of film.
And that is why we exist, to focus more on the emotional connection than the technical merit.
Because every movie makes us feel something. Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Feelin Film podcast. I'm Patch, and with me, buckled in and ready to drive a Charger down an exploding dam, is my friend and co-host Aaron.
Zoom, zoom. Let's go.
Trying to picture you doing that, and I'm laughing and also celebrating because that would be fun to watch. Your death would not be fun to watch, but it would be fun to watch.
No, but I wouldn't die if it's anything like this movie series.
True.
There's nothing
if you're
to
in
worry
the franchise
about,
and you're part of the family, even if you die, you're probably coming back in some subsequent entry. Well, this week we checked out the latest in the unofficial Fast and Furious saga, and I say unofficial because in the Feelin Film universe, the last official film was 7 with the departure of Paul Walker. The subsequent entries have basically given us superhero-esque stories, and with that, a mental shift in how Aaron and I enjoy them. Did we enjoy this latest entry? Well, this is your official spoiler warning that we will be talking in detail about it. So, fasten your seatbelts and let's race, or rather talk. And I had to throw that pun in there. I know people who are reviewing this movie are probably throwing that in there because it's been a pun that's been thrown around since the announcement of this entry. And so I have no apologies to include it in our podcast since it's a dad joke and we're dad joke people.
Horrible mistake not to just straight up call this movie that, especially with the level of self-awareness in this movie. You really should have just gone all the way and called it fat.
Yeah, I am absolutely in agreement with you. I think that this is where we're at in the franchise. And, so here we go. All right, let's talk a little bit about opening thoughts. I know that when the last couple of entries rolled through, we had Fate of the Furious, which definitely felt more like Mission Impossible and 007 type stuff. Then we got into Fast 9, which quite literally took us to space at one point. I was really kind of like, are we really going to cover anything else? Can we just stop? Because you get to a point of being like, okay, haha, funny. I can't defend this franchise any more than I already have. I have to definitely tell people who are like eye rolling at this franchise and say, listen, first 7. And when I say first 7, it just makes me feel a little bit dumber because I'm like, it took 7 movies to defend, but I still stand by that. You still stand by that. And we will continue to do that. But we continue to go back into the theater. We continue to watch these movies that seem to get bigger by the budget, bigger by the effects, bigger by the set pieces. And I really wanted to enjoy this movie. So before I give my thoughts, Aaron, tell me about yours going into this and then coming out.
All right. This might take a second. I will try to keep it somewhat condensed, but I went into this, I rewatched Fast 9, whatever it's actually called, before this viewing. I came out of Fast 9 very down on the series. 8 was, I think, probably our collective least favorite up until that point. And 9, I remembered not liking. I rewatched it. I enjoyed it more. I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. And when I say I enjoyed it quite a bit, I have to state that I mean I enjoyed 8 and 9 both relatively more. I like or have fun and have enough fun with this series because of its characters now that I'm okay with the BS and the stupidity. I can tolerate it. What I discovered, Patrick, after watching Fast 10 and then coming out of it, having a really good time, the crowd was high energy, there was a lot of laughter. I reviewed it pretty middle of the road, but positive because I felt that they went all the way in on being self-aware now. Like they started it in Fast 9 with the whole Tyrese joking as Roman, Tyrese joking about like how they were superheroes and invincible. He was saying it in the dialogue. And this one, they just completely abandoned any and all semblance of trying to be realistic. And so I think that was the natural conclusion for where they were heading. And instead of trying to balance things and try to walk both lines, it was much better to just do it this way. That being said, even though I enjoyed it in the moment, I have found that in the nearly 2 weeks now since I've seen this movie, I have thought about it or thought about it positively less and less. And I have forgotten pretty much everything about the plot beats of the movie. And even having watched Fast 9 just a few weeks ago, I couldn't even tell you the plot beats hardly of that movie either. And so I'm starting to wonder where I'm really at with this. I don't have any desire to rewatch anything past 7 in our canon anymore. And so it's weird because I went in there, Patrick, and I had fun. I came out of the movie and I was like, that was a really dumb movie, but it was an energetic, fine night at the movies. But there's zero stakes anymore to me, and nothing about the characters has gotten better. Every single character to me gets worse and worse and worse. And the only thing that saved this movie, and I think everybody who sees it will say the same thing, is that Jason Momoa walks into it as a villain, right? And his performance singularly makes this thing worth watching. But that really sucks because I used to be into this franchise for the family. And now it's such a joke. And the movie is so much making fun of itself and asking you to, I said this in our FF review, I feel like instead of asking you to laugh with it, the franchise is now asking you to laugh at it. And I'm conflicted, man. I'm conflicted on whether that is good filmmaking because it's achieving its intended result or whether that's just really actual bad filmmaking and I'm giving it a pass because I have a history with the franchise. There's my opening rant. So I don't even know what you think of it. I hope I haven't swayed you in any way.
No, you haven't. And I was one of these guys that I watched Fast 5 because I knew that it was connected back to that. And it was a smart move. Fast 5 is clearly what I would call the best in the franchise. It's the one that I remember the most in terms of set pieces, in terms of introductions of new characters and villains and things like that. It was the first time we got to see The Rock in the franchise. And it's interesting, Aaron, because when I think about 4 is forgettable. And I don't mean that in a bad way. So I'm going to say this flat out. Anything with Paul Walker in it in the franchise is good. Okay. 3 is good because of the way that it retcons Han. And it's a fun movie to watch if you watch it in the canon order, like if you watch it after 5 or 6 or whatever. But it's interesting because 4, I don't remember much, but it introduces a couple of new characters. I think it introduces Gal Gadot in that one. And then 6, I don't remember much of. I think it's the one with the car flying across buildings in Dubai, maybe. Or maybe that's 7. See, that's
6 is the never-ending runway and Letty's memory.
Is it?
Because Letty's gone in 5.
Oh, that's right.
That's the weird thing about it is the best movie in the franchise that everybody
doesn't
agrees
have Letty. Yeah.
Doesn't have Michelle Rodriguez in it.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this about a recap of all the movies. So what I'm getting to is there are movies that are forgettable in the franchise, not because they're bad, but because they blend and because there's a consistency in tone, there's a consistency in action, and yes, it ups every entry, but it seems to do so in a way that makes sense to the franchise. And when we talk about that drop off, because of the fact that we love Paul Walker's not the franchise. I'm going to say that right now. He's not the franchise. The family is the franchise. This ensemble cast is the franchise. He is a significant part because he helped start it in terms of his character. He is a through line, just like Vin Diesel's character is for the most part, with the exception of Tokyo Drift, where he comes in at the end and all that good stuff. So his departure makes the subsequent films really weird because we talk about this quite a bit when we talk about the franchise. Where is Paul Walker? Where is this character that's alive, Brian O'Connor, with his kids? He is, and I'm saying this very tongue-in-cheek, he was nowhere to be found in this movie, Aaron. And yet his wife was showing up. And it's that sort of self-awareness that I think causes me to dismiss these next films because of what you're talking about, that self-awareness that leads to a self-deprecation that leads to oh yeah, they're the joke at the party. They think they're being the funny people. They think they're being the dopes, and they're self-aware, but really they are the joke, and nobody wants them at the party. And so when I watch these movies, I think that watching 9 specifically, where I was frustrated with, although I had a good time, is that 8 and 9 and even 10 to an extent are just reasons to introduce new characters. So, case in point, you bring in Jacob, you bring in John Cena because he's a big action star, and this is basically becoming now a WWE movie because all your former WWE stars are rocking and rolling, and now he's dead, apparently. We'll get into that. So what was the point? What was the point of having him in the movie in 9, except to introduce him only to have him leave? Just bring somebody else in. Just invent some other character or some other person that's going to feel like a guardian over this kid and have him die. So it's stuff like that doesn't make sense, because when you introduce a character and you spend a whole movie developing a character, aka Jacob's character in Fast 9, to make him a good guy only to kill him off, apparently, it's very, very frustrating, because it's like, I don't really care at this point who dies or who lives, because everybody's going to live. I mean, bring Vince back, for goodness sake. If you're going to bring characters back, if you're not going to have them die, Vince is a great character to bring back. I mean, if you're not going to, I mean, his death was phenomenal in terms of like the stakes and the weight and everything, how that happened. Fast 5, again, the way that happened. Go ahead and bring him back, because you have no respect for these characters enough to let a sleeping dog lie. And I'm specifically speaking about Gal Gadot. Great seeing her. She's a beautiful woman, and she's going to be a lot of fun in the second entry of 50. And the fact is, I'm going to like seeing her on screen, and she's going to have some fun stuff, and I'm going to be thinking in the back of my head, why? She fell off a plane. How did she survive that? And
Right.
It's that kind of stuff that I can enjoy in the moment with you. And it becomes essentially a forgettable movie that is popcorn fodder. It's like, I'm going to eat my popcorn, drink my Coke, and then I'm going to leave the theater and I'm going to go hang out with my buds because I needed to cover this for the show. These are not movies that I'm like excited about. Like, there's a slew of movies that I'm looking forward to this summer. There's The Flash, maybe, if it's ever going to come out. And then there's Transformers. And then there's these other big, solid, unfortunate IP-driven movies. But they're going to have more value to me because they're going to feel like self-contained stories, or at least taking themselves serious enough that they're not going to feel like they're a cash grab. And that's what I think we're experiencing here is Vin Diesel has said, this is a cash grab. This is the other Universal property that is not called Jurassic something that people will come back for because it's big, dumb, fun, and nobody cares. Except us. And that's why we're so pissed about it.
I mean, everybody. Yeah, that's the problem. Like, isn't that the problem? Everybody's going to the movie. We're all paying our money or whatever we're doing, but we're all seeing it. Even the people that are going knowingly into it, hating it. And they're going to talk about it and trash it. But they still went and they still saw it. They're still engaging with the art. And this is where Hollywood gets us. And this is where this franchise and others that won't end, and others that these Disney remakes and things like that, not that they can't be good every once in a while, but that's where it happens, is we are all sheep and we just keep doing it. And so why would they stop? And I agree with you. It is no longer about good storytelling. It is about Vin Diesel's ego and cash. And his ego has single-handedly, I think, written this franchise into the ground, which is sad. But you look at his beef with The Rock, I'm not taking sides in that, but the fact that he lets it happen, the fact that he's making ultimatums as well, and this film to me felt like the peak of that. You know, when this movie started, it was Justin Lin again, who I thought, okay, we always have a shot if Justin Lin's in charge. Justin Lin left the production in the middle of this movie. And there was really not anything specifically said about why, other than there were some conflicts. I believe it's because of it going this far off. How do you come back from going to space? And I think that is part of the problem. Like, the movie saw the fans joking constantly about, what are you going to do, go to space eventually? And so they were like, the fans are writing our movie. This is what the fans want, so this is what we'll make. That's not how you tell stories. That is not good actual storytelling. That is just feeding people Easter eggs and references to give them a quick hit of dopamine. And as fun as that part of that movie was, the plot point of Fast 9 to get to space was horrible. Like the way that they actually create, like bringing back Lucas Black for that and Twinkie, like it was the most awful integration. It was the worst part of that movie for me, honestly. Even though I loved the moments in space with Roman and Tej. So it's like this push and pull, right? So anyway, I think we get to this movie and there is no, how do you bring stakes when you've literally gone to space and back? And
yeah,
you can't.
You can't. But this is one of the high points for me that I thought the movie did well, is it literally brought it back to Earth. And it attempted to, and in some ways, for me, in the moment, did a really good job. Everything was practical. Like the bomb, as, again, we cannot apologize more for the bombasticness of this franchise. It's just big and fun, and everything is just crazy. You can do the same thing. I mean, we should call this the next Mission Impossible or the next 007. If you put 007 somewhere in this title, or Mission Impossible somewhere in this title, you forgive all the craziness, because that's what happens in these movies. If Mission Impossible, the next entry, had a big giant 1-ton bomb rolling through Rome at some point, we would not blink an eye at it. Why? Because it makes sense for that universe. And I think that it's okay for it to make sense here, because of the fact that we've already done all those things. We've gone to space. We've hijacked a submarine. We've put bombs on tanks and things like that. I mean, they're just big set pieces that I'm looking forward to seeing. What I liked about this, Aaron, was the fact that we did sort of get back to that grounded nature with that big set piece. And as someone who's the crotchety old man, I've taken that moniker on. Long movie times frustrate me. Some of these action set pieces should have been, pared down a little bit. Taken a little bit too long, but I loved some of the stunt work. I loved the motorcycle, the fact that we get Letty doing that cool thing. It's in the trailer, but she's like hopping over the guardrail, and then we get the sequence on the bridge, and we get on the highway with the helicopter, again, something we saw in the trailer. But I think that even like the street race coming back, like that was something that I thought was smart and effective. Again, it was introducing a new character, a new member of the family, as we find out. But I liked that we saw a street race. I liked that we sort of got to that. We knew that it couldn't be about the street race. It couldn't be about going back to Rio and saying, it's all going to come down to Reyes' kid Dante facing off against Dominic Toretto. It was a means to an end. But I liked that we got there, because that was what we liked about the originals. And I think that kind of scene reminded me that this movie can still have moments of pre-7 Fast and Furious and still be big. And I think that that's a strength of this one. The last movie just felt all over the place. I felt like the integration of the characters and the reintroduction of characters that we already know in this entry was a lot more well thought out. It felt a lot more fluid, because it made sense when we see them. Made sense when they show up. When I see Lucas Black, and I love Lucas Black. He's a fantastic actor. I love him and most of the things that he's in. But seeing him in Fast 9 was like an eyesore. And it was like, we're just throwing these guys in there because, you know what? We haven't seen them in a while. We need to bring them back. Well, you've got 85 new members of your family, or old members of your family. So how are you going to bring that into play? And I thought the 10th entry held its own with the characters that it used in a certain capacity. The problem with that many characters is you have to give them all certain amounts of screen time, certain lines, and people get lost. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, they do. And as much as I think it worked somewhat, even the fact that they tied this to Fast 5, to me, is another symbol of not knowing how to write a good movie. You're retelling the beginning of Fast 5 from this new perspective with CGI'd in Jason Momoa into the scenes. And so that's one thing that bothered me about this one. It's just that it looks like crap the whole time. I don't believe they were ever actually in Rome. Everything looks like it's like CGI'd car races on top of streets, and it just never felt at all like practical hardly. But they go with the 5 like retread, and the point, while Dante works as a character, his backstory is shoehorned in there to attach this movie to the one movie that everybody universally loves. It's like, we need to feed off of that energy that people like that, so we got to bring that one back, right? But yes, I liked some of the new, like, I like Alan Ritchson a lot. I love that guy as an actor. I think he did a good job, even if his heel turn is completely weird and makes no sense because we have no context for why that would happen yet. And this movie just ends in the middle of it. It's a weird, complete cliffhanger movie. But I liked his performance. I thought it was fun to see Brie Larson in the universe. I love her, but I felt like she was completely underused. Like, she just showed up like maybe 1 or 2 days on set. And I've even seen scenes of like her behind a green screen, standing on a car and staring into a camera and just, you know, rubbing her foot into the ground. And those things came out to me in the scenes. Like, it was obvious that they weren't actually acting with each other. And there was no emotional attachment to them. The one part that worked for me big time, Patrick, and I think really saved the movie experience from being completely brain dead, was I actually love John Cena. So I thought that his scenes with Dom's son, Brian, wish I knew his name off the top of my head.
Just call him B.
Well, I know it's little B.
Little
I'm
B.
saying I wish I could say the actor's name off the top of my head.
Oh, gotcha.
But I thought that their chemistry and their relationship, and every time that they were on screen together, was a top highlight of the movie for me. I thought that one tiny little subplot or whatever of the movie was great from start to finish. And I even, as crazy as it looked, like, I need I need Jacob to stay dead, because that is the only time we got stakes, because he sacrifices himself for little B. And it was beautiful. It was overly melodramatic, like every other scene in this movie. And it doesn't work in 9 out of 10 of them, I think. But it worked in that one for me. I just thought that was something they finally got right. And, you know, it's kind of a bummer that it's the character that died. The one character that maybe seemingly is actually finally dead. Like you said, like, we get him to come, we get him in, and then we're just going to shuffle him right back out or something. But I do want to give it praise for that.
Well, I do too, until he comes back. And then I'll just, you know, throw my proverbial middle finger at the franchise and say, why can't you have somebody stay dead? Why do you have to continuously bring people back? Because it speaks on a smaller scale. Well, it does 2 things. One, it blows your budget, because every time you bring a celebrity, a big name star, back to the big screen, like a Gal Gadot or a John Cena, you're paying those people. And I'm like, if you're talking about getting dollars, if you're being honest, beyond ego, and you're trying to boost the budget, if I'm Vin Diesel, my ego is saying John Cena stays dead. Gal Gadot stays dead, because we don't need them. And I say that very, very respectfully to the characters, because they had their time in the sun, and because their deaths mattered. Their deaths mattered. The moment you bring him back, the moment you bring her back, the moment you'll bring Vince back, because Vince is not dead, he's somewhere, it's just not going to matter. Because every explosion that leads to someone's apparent death is just me going, okay, we'll see you in the next entry at some point because you're hidden under a cave. Like when the C5 exploded, like when it goes down in the background at the very end, I chuckled. Like, and I was in the theater with like 5 other people because it was early in the morning.
I did
but
as well.
I went like that.
No one believes that.
Because
no one
nobody believes that coming back. I mean, you cannot, and I say this because the franchise is this way, you can't kill off Tej and Roman and Han. You can't do it. You
well,
cannot
and definitely
do it.
not like that. Like off screen?
Yeah.
What are you kidding me? Like, you wanting me to believe that I felt insulted in that moment.
Yeah.
I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, don't cause the explosion. Cause the thing to get hit and then have it go off screen, but don't let it explode. Because what's going to happen? I'm predicting it right now. The next entry is going to obviously show what happened. They're going to be getting in their cars. They're going to see it's going down, and you got Shaw and Han and Tej and Roman are going to have banter. Shaw's going to say something like really British and really, terrible like this. And then Han's going to be eating his chips. I'm like, I think we should get in the cars, guys. And they're going to fly out and have this great big stunt piece. And we're going to be like, yeah, they lived. And they're like, yeah, of course they did. Let's just see the cars fly to the ground and not get hurt at all. And again, it's one of those things where you suspend your disbelief to a point. But when you have an ensemble cast and when you're framing it around family, you have to lose family in order to be able to value that family. And this is what I'm scared of, Aaron. I'm scared of the fact that if you're apparently killing people off screen, there's going to be a line of dialogue. Mia's going to come up to Dom at some point in the next entry and like, I can't believe what just happened. Dante has killed Paul, or excuse me, he's killed Brian. It's gonna happen.
I don't believe that. I don't think so. I think he's the untouchable. I think he's the one untouchable.
Then he's the biggest eyesore because
they put him in the movie. They put him in this movie with dialogue. I was like, stop it. Stop it.
I know. It's just, I get that it's a product. You can't literally bring someone back from the dead, an actor. I find it very difficult that in a universe that prides itself on everybody staying together and protecting, and this like that, the one guy who's probably coaching a soccer team, he can't make it the biggest mission on the planet. He's sending his wife to do it, who in the very beginning was not part of any of this. Like Fast Five, again, one of the great lines in Fast Five is when Vince says, what kind of family are we? You brought the Buster in who, you didn't believe me when I said he was a cop. Look where we are, and now you bring Mia into this. And I'm not saying Mia is not a strong character. She is. But she had nothing to do here. All she had to do was hang out at a barbecue and then get the signal that this psycho, Dante, is coming after her. So she's like, deuces, got to go back to Paul, got to go back to Brian and the family, wherever they're living. And it's just, I think the cast is too big. It's absolutely too big. And when we get that racing scene, which I found very visually appealing, it definitely called back with the obligatory booties and all that stuff and the hip hop and everything. And we get the reveal that the girl is the sister of Elena, Isabel. I'm like, okay, why not? Let's just, lose one, win one, lose one, gain one. But I'm like, what are you going to do with her in the next movie? What are you going to do with all these characters? By the end of the franchise, Aaron, 1 out of every 5 people is going to be a member of this family on the planet. I mean, 1 out of every
basically,
5.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a multi-level marketing campaign that if you become a member of the family, you got to recruit like 10 people to become a member of this family, and then they recruit 10 people.
Ponzi scheme.
And then, yeah, it's a Ponzi scheme. It's the Fast and Furious Ponzi scheme. And I jokingly say that, but the stakes get a lot lower because I don't spend time with all these characters, and they might be fun on the screen for a couple of minutes, but then they get killed off, and I'm like, why should I care? They're just red shirts at this point. And what it does for me is it diminishes the value of that theme, because that's what you and I gravitate towards, this idea of a core group of 5 or 6 folks. And in 5, that's where the magic was. You had this core group that didn't have any extraneous, like, tentacle family members attached to it. It was about this core group. And I can't remember the characters, the two Puerto Rican guys that one of them's like, you always so negative, man. I miss those guys. Obviously the actors probably didn't want to come back, and they weren't major characters, but they were part of that group, and they all had a purpose. That's where I think we're lost here, is it made it difficult for me to watch and say, okay, well, what's the purpose of Shaw? What's the purpose of, Tej or Isabel at this point? What's their point besides just being connected to Dom in some way, shape, or form? I didn't really know, and I didn't really care. I was just watching it for the fun at this point.
Yes, and the whole thing kicks off with Cypher suddenly being friends. Now it's like, oh, the enemy of my enemy is my enemy, or whatever it is. I forget. Is my friend. And there's this whole thing, and she's like, oh, he's coming for you. And so now she's teaming up with them. It is absolutely asinine. Like, she has been the most supervillainous of supervillains for 3 movies or 2 movies. And all of a sudden now it just flips in a heartbeat, right? And she has nothing to do in this either at all. She's just there to get set up for future movies, I guess. And it's just stretched so thin that nobody gets enough time to feel like there's any meaningful character development. And that's partly because they don't know how to craft it anymore, and partly because there's just too many people. Even if they did know how, I don't know how they'd be very successful. And it gets annoying. The saving grace was the villain. Like, I think this would have been a situation where I almost was completely out if the villain was a couple notches below this in quality. But he's so funny. He's so watchable. He's so eccentric. Jason Momoa fits so perfectly in this world as this wacky character that is truly just trying to rain down chaos on them. And I think that's what makes it somewhat work, is that he says it over and over and over. I'm not trying to end you yet. Like, I just want you to suffer. And so you at least have given yourself a true written narrative reason to stretch this stupid thing out for 2 or 3 more movies, because he doesn't want to end everything in that first moment. He is just trying to constantly hurt you because he wants to take out your family piece by piece by piece until Dom is left. Well, Dom and Hobbs are left to pay singly for his dad's death or whatever. Yeah. Like, I actually understood his character motivation. Mm-hmm. All the criticisms I have are not gone, but like, it actually made sense, and his actions were enjoyable as heck to watch. And at least anytime he was on screen, I always knew that when the movie was going to come back to him in the like kind of parts that were like, oh, we're okay, we're just spinning our wheels, just going through like 2 minutes with some other character so we can I knew we were going to get back to Jason Momoa. And so I was excited about that. And I'm glad that he's not gone, because he is going to carry this thing out through the end of it. Hopefully, God willing. I would love for it just to end after 2 and not do a third one like Vin Diesel teased. Like, please, please, please put it out of our misery. But like, he felt, I hate to use the comparison of Thanos. He's nothing like Thanos, like actually, but it is somewhat like the Infinity War and Endgame scenario of the Fast family. Nowhere near that in quality, but it's a similar situation. We are hurtling towards the end.
Yeah. And I think that's what we're hoping for, is we're hoping for some stakes. We're hoping for some death here. I mean, who's going to be left standing when all this is over? And I completely agree. Dante's character is phenomenal in this. The moment that cinched it for me, that I kind of went, oh my God. Sistine Chapel blowing up, that's one thing. Cool, whatever. And just how he's so matter-of-fact about everything. But the moment that cinched it for me was him painting toenails on these dead dudes and then leaving. Like, okay, I was like, okay, now we're hitting into Heath Ledger's Joker.
That was really, that was the over-the-top moment.
That was but it tells us that he's gone off the rails. Like, he is not just getting revenge. Like, he is hurt. There's psychological hurt here that we're not going to explore, because this is not the franchise to do that. But it puts him in a position where he can take these guys down beyond just an action adventure movie. Like, he has psychological warfare going for him. The ability to connect, the ability to, however he does it, God's eye or whatever, but the ability to stay connected and 2 steps ahead of all these different characters, I think is great. I loved his introduction when Cypher is talking about how he basically manipulated all the soldiers by telling them all, hey, I've got your kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like Anakin Skywalker. He's going to kill kids. This is what's going to happen. And it really set the stage for this kind of character that I see visually in the trailer. And I'm like, oh, cool. He's like a little like Jamaican dude. And he's just like lots of fun. One, he doesn't have a Puerto Rican accent.
Brazilian.
So he must,
not even close.
And he doesn't need to. He does not need to, because his culture is not what he's trying to build off of. It's about, he wants to take down Dom and Hobbs. And that's the other thing that I was thinking about before the mid-credit scene showed up. I was like, Dom didn't do this. Okay. Dom stole your money in one of the most amazing chase sequences on screen, but he didn't kill your dad. That was this other guy. And then we get the reveal moment, and that was another moment I was like, okay, that's fine. Go ahead. Apparently there was a feud, and maybe that feud was a big PR stunt that they didn't have a feud. I don't know. Or maybe Dom was like, listen, in order to make this work, we got to bring you back because it's not going to make sense.
Well, I heard this, and I can't remember who else said it first, so I would give credit if I could, but think about this. The two characters coming back just got fired by DC. Both of their franchises tanked. They no longer have anything else like that. So The Rock was banking on Black Adam, and he had put all his eggs in that basket, and he was going to make it this big deal, and then it freaking bombed. Gal Gadot doesn't get asked to come back as Wonder Woman. They got to do something in the franchise, and I think that part probably plays into this, honestly, where it's like, well, we're free now. So can we get a little bit of that? And I mean, frankly, I'm glad. I think as much as I love the original movies, even before, I love all four before The Rock showed up. But I think him coming back will help to infuse this with some more energy that it needs. And him with and against Momoa is what I'm more excited about in a finale than I am anything emotional at this point. Yeah. I mean, we had our emotional moment in 7, as we've said. Like that's it. That's perfect. That ending was perfect. And so now you keep saying people need to die, which I keep giggling because you sound so awful when you say it. You're like, we need deaths. We need deaths. Please kill these characters that we supposedly love. Yeah. But at this point, they're just toys to us too because they're treating them like toys. So who cares? Like, yeah, murder them all. Like, let them go down in flames. You know, I don't know.
That's my soundbite for our pull quote. Murder them all.
Lil B in a Corona. That's all that's going to be left.
Yeah. You can have any death in this movie as long as they're drinking a Corona.
Yeah,
that'd be Vin Diesel. I think that when I finish off this movie, I like that we're getting. I guess I feel like this movie borrows from a lot. And it's borrowing, obviously, from Endgame and Infinity War. Like, okay, what's going to happen? And it definitely feels very elementary. Like, it feels like a short film version pulling from, okay, this worked once. Let's see if it works again. But in a franchise that's not going to be as widely, like, game changeable. Like, the end of this franchise is not going to feel as weighted as the first half because it's so long. And, you know, someone who, I don't know anybody who defends this besides us, but we don't even defend it holistically. But if somebody were, they might make the argument, well, look at the MCU and all the movies it did. So, yeah, because there was a lot of thought that went into each one of them to bring them all together. These are just sort of, at this point, gunslinging movies that are like, let's bring you back. And here's the thing. One of the things I struggle with is that the formula has started to become this. The enemy in movie X becomes the friend in movie Y. The enemy in movie Y. So what I don't want to happen is for Dante to be like, hey, everything's cool. You killed my dad and you kind of ruined my life and I ruined yours. It's not going to happen. I think he's going to have to die or something's going to have to happen to him because we can't just keep doing this. It doesn't make sense. And it's, again, it lowers lose your family. You know? Stop. What I did like, though, in terms of how this movie ended, is I liked the little twist with Ames. Didn't quite trust him because he was a little bit of a toot in terms of badgering and whatnot. And I think that's kind of cool. It tells me that Dante has the ability to manipulate pretty much anybody he can. A little bit of trivia here. Ames, played by, is Alan Richter, correct?
Alan Richardson,
sorry, yeah. He and Jason Momoa have a common role in the character of Aquaman. So
yes, they do. That's right.
He played. When I saw him, I was like, "Hey, look, Aquaman's gonna take on Aquaman at this point." And then when they joined forces, I was like, "Well, that beats all. You've got two underwater royal people that are gonna just take on the world together." So good for them, Arthur Curry and Arthur Curry.
That's pretty funny. I'd forgotten about that. That's
Yeah.
pretty. That was before he was quite that jacked. Actually,
Dude,
he didn't. He was
swole.
I mean, he was big then, but he's not this big.
No, he is definitely like American Gladiator swole at this point, like just ready to just chew somebody with his hand or something.
I think that we will get the slow play up to Jason Momoa as the final villain now being killed off. They'll have to go through Ames, so Ames will have to die first. I will not be surprised at all, and if I had to predict, I'd almost put money down that Cypher will flip back and betray them in some way, shape, or form before it's over. I don't think she'll stay a friend, an ally through the end of this. So, but I hope. I mean, I've said I hope a lot in the last several years when they keep making these movies, and they just don't listen to my hopes. So maybe we're wrong, and I'm trying to think of who else is out there like that's a giant person that could become their new version of Jason Momoa. But as much as he's been highly praised in the aftermath of this film, even by the people that don't like the movie, I think they would be remiss to mess that up, and they'll just let it go with him all the way to the end. But yeah, it's such a mixed bag for me. I do still like the creativity of the set pieces, even if I don't love the execution, because I thought that it was really janky and just so unrealistic that it's hard for me to fully give myself over to enjoyment. I kind of disagree. Like I don't think they would ever do that ping pong ball thing in Mission Impossible. It's way over the top. It's too. They might have a bomb planted in the Vatican that somehow Ethan Hunt needs to get to and do one thing to make it go away, but it would not roll through Rome in Mission Impossible, bouncing off of cars, and it's so stupid. It's so bad. It's funny. Like, people say that all the time, like, it's so bad, it's good. And I used to rage against that, but this may be an example of it. It is so bad, it's kind of good, because you just give up trying to care. But, like, the moment when that thing swings around, and, I mean, you see it coming, and you're like, oh my gosh, the crane. I know exactly what's...
Yeah.
You can imagine it, because you've been a kid that has played with your toys before, and that's what they're doing. And so, on that level... it's entertaining. The whole hooking the helicopters together and like driving and then smashing them together. Totally ridiculous, but it looked super cool. The whole like Lil Beef flying out of the car from car to car, which we've done multiple but it's filmed in such a way that is so self-aware of how stupid it is. And yet I'm shaking my head, but I'm grinning at the same time I'm watching it. And that's why I say I'm so conflicted. I don't want to praise this movie. I don't feel like it deserves that, but I also can't deny my reaction to it when I was watching it. One time. I'm giving it once.
It's a one-time watch for me, for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's an in-the-moment movie, where in the moment it satisfies pretty much every theater experience box that you need to check. And once you leave the theater, it's on to the next thing. This is not a movie that you're going to be thinking, man, I got to watch this every summer, or man, this is one of the bigger blockbusters of the 2000s. And we've said this in general about movies, that they don't have to be those things. But I think for us, our frustration is centered on the fact that it comes from a place where the franchise was thoughtful, and it had a lot of action, and it was big, and it was all fitting in this world where everything about it was that you could have set pieces that were exciting and somewhat off the wall, but not lose the impact of the characters that are portrayed here and their loss or the stakes that are there. You know, when people die, or when someone falls over a cliff or something like that. I mean, it's fun to watch and it's really exciting, but because of the investment that we have from previous films, there is a little bit of you that goes, oh gosh, I hope they don't. Okay, and they didn't, great. And so by the time we get to 5, 6, and 7, we are losing characters. We are either they leave, like Han leaves and dies, not really, in the third entry / sixth entry. And then you have Gal Gadot's character who dies. And that death, that loss, leads to Han that's set up from 4 on. Like, they keep talking about, yeah, well, maybe we should go to London, or maybe we should go here. And they're like, no, I like Japan, I like Tokyo. And it's just, it's it's coming because you've seen the movie, and all those first 7 movies were just so well thought out. Even when you retconned something, it felt like, okay, we want to fit this in. We don't want this to just be a one-off, because it really started finding its footing back with 4, and then 5 was like yes, we're here. So the challenge that I think we face as fans, Aaron, is the fact that 8, 9, and 10 feel a little bit like self-contained stories about the adventures of Dom and family. And so we know that nothing bad is going to happen to them. The only connection we have is that Jacob showed up and his origin existed. His entrance was in the previous film, and that Cypher's was in the entry prior to that. If I already knew that, if I didn't have that knowledge, I would have felt like, okay, cool. Like, nothing they did per se in this entry felt like I needed to care about what happened in Fate or what happened in 9. I just really enjoyed the movie for what it is, and I think that's okay. I think it's absolutely fine to be able to enjoy a movie in and of itself. So I think my final thought here is going to be that if this movie existed without any previous entries, I think it would have been a pretty good action movie. Like, I think it would have made a lot of fun stuff happen, and we're like, cool, this is like a two-part movie where we get introduced these characters and the bad guy. As a self-contained 2-parter or 3-parter, I think it works. But in connection to all these other movies that preceded it, it just falls off the cliff. And I think that's a detriment to IPs. Because I think these movies can exist. Like Olympus Has Fallen, the Fallen movies, I think those work because they're a trilogy. Because it's just this one guy who's living out 3 different adventures. Indiana Jones, the same way. You can watch Temple of Doom, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Last Crusade, any order you want. They don't connect to each other, and that's why they work. Indy is the key. Now, they work for other reasons. I'm
Until
not saying
now,
that's the only reason.
Because I would almost guarantee you that Indy is going to link back in some way.
I agree, and what I hope will happen is that the movie itself can stand on its own without all these callbacks to previous movies where you have to bring back the Ark, you have to bring back Short Round, whatever. I mean, I know it's not going to happen. That's where I think action adventure movies thrive or die, ride or die, I guess. And that you have Mission Impossible, which you've let me know and reminded me that we've only covered one. We need to rectify that at some point. Ethan Hunt's the through line, but it's his crew from 3 on that help make the movie franchise work, because they all fit and they're not growing by leaps and bounds in population. You might add one here and there, but it's always been the core 4 or the core 5 or whatever. And that's what makes the franchise work, is Ethan Hunt's your action star. He's the anchor, but all these adventures can happen without necessarily connecting back to previous entries. Now, the last couple, yes, there's a little bit more of that, because as you get deeper into franchises, you have to make those connections. And that's what I think the Furious franchise suffers from, is too many connections back to the past, which make it a little less digestible each time.
Yeah. And I don't think Mission Impossible does that. It is continuing.
I don't either.
It's continuing to tell a single story. It is not stopping what it's doing in its track to do the Fast and Furious thing where, we're going to go back now. We're at 10. Let's make a sequel to 5.
Right.
Because you liked that one, and it's such a unique franchise that this has become. And all franchises, I don't know. I'm burning out on them. I burned out on the MCU, and now it's starting to turn into franchise burnout. And I hate that, but we are inundated with IP constantly. And so those movies that are coming out this year that are not IP related, I find myself getting more and more excited for those in a bigger way than I do number 8, number 9, number 7, number 10, and these franchises that literally just will not die. because they're cash cows.
Yeah.
Even when I love them like Avatar or whatever the case may be, you know, there's always going to be hits. I complain about the MCU all day long, but we get a Spider-Man No Way Home sometimes, and that's awesome. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes. Hopefully people die. Like you said, let's end it with that. Hopefully people die. That is our official position on this podcast.
Stamp it. It is official. Well, let's get excited about next week. We are covering You Hurt My Feelings. Speaking of people getting hurt or dying.
The way that ties in. Let's get excited about hurting feelings.
Yeah. I have not seen this.
And I hope you die. I mean, like, we're terrible people.
Look, we're now the Feelin Film Blunt podcast. Like, our feelings are blunt. That's what this is. We are covering You Hurt My Feelings because I didn't want to cover The Little Mermaid. That's how bad I am. I would rather cover a movie called You Hurt My Feelings than to dip into a live action remake of a great Disney movie. So I'm just gonna put it right there in the public face and say I'm the bad guy here. So yeah, I don't know what it's about, but I trust Aaron, and it's an independent film, so that's something to be excited about. And hopefully it will live up to his expectations on my end too. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Feelin Film. Aaron, thanks for another great conversation, and we'll talk soon.
Hey everyone, thanks again for listening. If you enjoy the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. These help increase visibility for the show and grow our community of listeners like you.
We also invite you to connect with us further by joining our ever-growing Facebook discussion group. A link to that is in the show notes, or you can just search on Facebook and find us that way.
If you'd like to continue the conversation with me, you can follow the show on Twitter @Feelin Film, or connect with me in the Facebook group. I'm very active in both places and would love to chat.
And if you want to connect with me, you can find me at Shoeless Patch on both Facebook and Twitter. Be sure to tag me in any comments so that I'll be notified and not miss you.
Once again, thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Until then, stay positive.
And keep feeling film.